Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon is Jupiter hour, and the ascendant is on midheaven, and the midheaven is conjuncting Mars. So ascendant 26 degrees is Sagittarius, Jupiter in the 8th house, and the moon in the 12th house, with Mars in the 10th. It's failed army time! And so, two things that prompted me to press record. One was I cruised over the fact that the IDF refused to go to Gaza just before a big operation in Gaza. So I still did not hear the news about what happened in Gaza. There were some bombings that we heard, and somebody said it's all the way from Gaza, there's something big happening there. I don't know. Anyway, the army refused, and then I looked to NATO news, and I see 21 hours ago, NATO allies refused to send troops to Kiev. So this is 60,000 people, and I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting because I predicted that there's going to be some polarity in the NAVO chart. So let's open the NAVO chart. I had chart IDF. IVF. I don't remember what. IVF is the way they make cloned babies. Um, Oak IVF. Now, IDF chart. I promised I will do that, and I'm gonna do IDF chart. Come on, it was the 26th of May. Nee, no Dayan nach. IDF, and this is, yeah, but we're gonna see when the date was, because I want to see both charts. So one is 26 May 1948. We don't have an ascendant, and the other one is, of course, NATO chart. So for NATO chart, I already predicted there's going to be some sort of a polarity, an argument, and even a rebellion. The possibility of a military strike comes from the sextile between Uranus and Saturn. Saturn is stopping, halting, and in the context of a sextile with Uranus, it can be an Italian strike or a strike. And in a Mars sign is military, anything that is of innovative entrepreneurship style, and Baphometian style. So I don't know anybody, but did the people? They should strike. I mean, but anyway, one would say any strike is also Baphometian strike, and I'm like, okay, 26 May, IDF and NAVO, 26 May, 48. Got all the way to the 20s. I'm just gonna give it unknown time. And let's do Jerusalem because it's either Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Let's give it a West Bank. For the watermelons. So, that's the IVF chart. Very similar to the Israeli chart, except that the moon is in Capricorn. Moon is still the people, so even in a military chart, I would want the moon in a good place. By the way, Hamas moon is in Capricorn, and yeah, they have been exiled. So Saturn is a restriction, especially in Capricorn, and Mars in Virgo, which is different to the Mars in Leo in Israel's chart. Chiron Ketu in Scorpio, which gives us a wound around psyops. It's basically a wound around the use of sexuality, sexual psychology, and intelligence, investigative, but there's a wound around that. Oh my God, don't tell me that the people who blame the CIA on the Mossad are right. We're going to compare it with NAFO. I say it's pretty much the same chart. Mars in Mercury sign, Mercury. Yes, Jupiter on my midheaven. Mars in Mercury, Mercury at home, Gemini, conjoining Uranus, which gives us an onset for the possibility of a military rebellion. And with Uranus Gemini, it's given just what we see, okay? The army strikes. Isn't that fun? Isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely that the soldiers refuse to go to war? Money laundering machine geboekt. and so, and so anyway, let's go to NAVO. A little more about the IDF chart. Lilith in 23, Lilith and Balgadi, and that can explain the presence of women, because it's supposed to be like equal distribution, and it's mandatory service also for women. We have combatant soldiers, we have all of these, and this also with Saturn in Leo, Saturn, Pluto in Leo. Again, because Lilith is about sexual sovereignty, and the world is not really sexually sovereign by and large, so it creates problems. But this one is not supposed to create problems. There is like, oh my God. This is not a good chart, okay? It's not a good. Chiron in the sign of, like, Chiron Ketu, Rao in Venus sign with Venus in Cancer. This is the good part, because they're going from this very wounded persona into an emphasis on the Venusian, on peace, on being well nourished. But the moon in Capricorn creates a certain delay or a certain. By the way, water discipline can be symbolized by this moon in Capricorn, which is like I said, the moon is in detriment in Capricorn. Saturn, Pluto having to work through austerity. Sun, Gemini. I don't have the houses. Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius. Lovely, lovely time. This is the first Uranus return for both NAFO and IDF, not IVF, IDF. Social engineers in the background. We got it. You managed to get it to say IVF. And from the gloved hand, it's like if they get marked to say hands in gloves, who am I, right? So volunteer this. Now let's go to NATO. So this, for me, this is an onset of Uranus in Gemini, sextile in Saturn, in Aries, and Mars in Libra. Okay, Mars in Libra, you see. I'm not gonna even say it. But I did predict that the army could strike. I did not predict it's going to be like a big bombastic thing with NATO. And yeah, refusing to send troops when Kiev is burning. And it happened right around the Independence Day of Ukraine. So there was a huge strike on Kiev right after Mark was meeting with Zelensky again. That guess that whenever they come out for coffee, the entire city burning. And I thought I'm troubles. Anyway, yes, I did say that. Um, for me, the problems begin when I'm leaving. The, uh, and the thing is that they know it more so than I, because I do not know. I only know the tip of the iceberg of the trouble. NATO. So again, Uranus, Gemini, triggering 10th house of NATO. Leadership crisis, we saw this. And now Mars is in the second, so it's house of values, and Mercury is in Mars sign. So at first we saw a division around who should fund NATO, and now we see a division around the value. And with Libra, Venus, there is a question of the value. Is it worth to fight for? Now, what do you mean, is it worth to fight for? It's like, is it not? Well, it's not about Ukraine not being worth it to fight for and so on. It's about picking one's battles. And the leading allies are picking their battles. Okay, this is why, if you think about what Russia did in Crimea, this is Article 5 par excellence, like we should have been in a world war. And there were missiles and this and that. You know, people talk about Rutte, but it's been a year and the world is not burned yet. Sometimes you need to say, you know, the good word when a good word is due. And so, like, if you've been seeing half of what happened since 2024, it was, I think, end of 2023, 2024, then, like, you would expect the world to be going down. But, like, really, they did the things with the kind of Cuba Missile Crisis again. They did the Wi-Fi underwater, messing with the cables from China. They bombed. They began to bomb. They bombed the British embassy. It's kind of like, please, we're doing everything, and I'm like, we never seen such a restraint, and all the while gathering up to the 5%. Now this tells us very simple truth. The alliance is picking the big fights. And okay, that's like, according to the many troubles, we should have been in a world war right now. But basically that was raising funds, and they are they're picking the big battle. And since the allies understand that the United States, what did I talk about? The allies understand that they're vying for commitment from Mr. Trump or from United States, whether Trump or not, on Article 5, which means that United States will attack with the allies if there is something like that has been happening in Ukraine since 2022. and also since Crimea. Then United States is committed to Article 5, as you can see, absolutely not, in practice. But the Allies also understand another thing, that to get United States to follow through with its commitment means entire Europe buying weapons from the US while paying for the 5%, not really seeing the money coming back to Thales, to the many companies, the European companies that produce weapons. Saturn in Aries is also delays when we talk about new production. Trump knows that. He's a real estate person. This is also Aries, and he's been through a couple of cycles of Saturn in Aries. Okay, not not counting anybody's years, but this is something that's important. He has gone through as a businessman a cycle of Mars in Aries, very likely more than once, and yes, so this is something that he's not a stranger to. Neither is Mark Rutte, of course. And this is where we get the question: should we pick this battle with this? Because all of this warmongering is supposed to make money, and for Europe it doesn't make any money. Now for United States it's important, because if they're not making money, there's no war. If they're not making money from the war, there's no war. And for Europe, if they're buying US, if they're spending 5% and they're buying only from US, or mainly from US, they're not making money. If they're not making money, there's no war. So no troops. Now what's the story with the IDF? It's a bigger question. I don't have the answer for that. And that's the thing. When it comes to Russia, okay, they're only one country, okay? They can't rely on the BRICS. They can't rely on North Korea to have an economy that can fund endless troops. And the people been dying in Ukraine. The people been dying in Ukraine. And Putin is known for the infrastructure in Russia. If he starts funneling the money and lose the infrastructure in Russia, people are going to notice. I mean, if the road is going to look like in Bulgaria suddenly, they're gonna look for, they're gonna miss a different Putin, and say it's a different Putin. He's been very appreciated for the infrastructure in Russia. Now, if everything's gonna be bombed, it's a problem. Okay, it's been one of the main things that people really, really like Putin. They said, with that person, the road looks great, the street, you go around and you enjoy to take a walk around. Okay, you don't want to lose that. And he has to fund for a war with an economy that's basically based on oligarchy. And he's not selling weapons, not to the amount where it's economic to go to an endless war. He can produce. Russia can produce, but with the oligarchy it's a problem, because what happens? There's stagnation in the science. You see, when there is KGB or see even MK Ultra, the West has it with MK Ultra, is stagnation. What happened with the Challenger during the Cold War? Okay, that's Feynman. The Challenger Everything was set. They were ready to launch, but the weather was too cold. They knew that the weather is too cold. Now the rubber, okay, in that weather it begins to crack with the friction. Where you set the rocket on, it begins to explode. And that's what happened with the Challenger. Now, how do you get people to do that? Well, when your science is based on a cult of treason, that's what Feynman couldn't say. Okay, but when your science is based on somebody had to betray somebody. That's what happened. They can't say it, they won't say it. Somebody had to betray somebody. And you see, when your science is operated with those rites and rituals, when it's the money time, it's gonna be failed army. And then you're not making any money. So what we have right now is a fascinating crisis where it's not really economic to go to war. As for China, American comfort is made in China. You want to keep it like that, right? Because if they go to local produce in America and they already got the death and concentration camps there, on the one hand, America can be conquered by China. On the other hand, China is going to have to fund for that. It's a huge territory they already have. Now for another territory, now Taiwan wants out. The many cantons are going to want out. I mean, when you have an artificial sun and you make it outside and people melt with the death van and stuff, people want out. The rural, they love the government like they liked Mao because they don't suffer from that much. But the people who suffer from that, they want out. Now you're going to have that in America? And a surveillance company, you see, Palantir one day, off the stocks, the founder sells the stocks. They're going to switch companies, but it's based on betrayal. So one day you're up, one day you're down. And this is exactly the military strike, the Uranus Gemini. So what we are finding out is that good thing, bad thing, who knows, to run a military alliance or even a local army like the IDF, okay? NATO is a military alliance. IDF is one army. Both on strike. Now, if you think that the terrorist, that the guerrilla that's running on petroleum from Qatar, the petroleum runs out because Qatar don't make any money. If this guy's not going to war, this guy's not going to war, why go to war? I mean, if the IDF doesn't come to Gaza, you want to go to the IDF? First of all, they go meet you with cookies and black coffee. The mama of the soldier, the Israeli Nona. You've seen the Italian Nona, you haven't seen the Israeli Nona. Okay? That's mind control par excellence. People don't survive that. They're gonna sit you down, and her son won't even have to say you don't want balagan. Come have a coffee, some cookies, maybe even hush cookies if you keep it. Everybody's on PTSD, right? So they need something. I mean, if the IDF doesn't come to you, you don't want to go greet it. That's resting Taurus army. Don't wake sleeping bears. And so they're not gonna want to go to war either. They're not representing any liberation or anything. Nothing. They run on money and on drugs. Now, drugs you can take recreationally, and if these guys striking, those guys striking. Now, what happens when the army strikes on you? We're having a world war now. We're not. It's world war now. It's civil war clock. We found that this alliance. Yes, it's Uranus return. No, we're not gonna die for your economic hitmanship. But MK Ultra, again this MK Ultra. Mark Rutte is a targeted individual. We're all in this together. Everybody has had enough. Everybody's had enough of having enough of the Palantir. But Epstein was a diversion tactic to get the war done, and the war done was a diversion tactic to not talk about Epstein. So now while we are resting and everybody connects the Epstein and the CIA and the USA and the IDF and the IVF and the IVF and the IVF and the cloning, you see, those things are the reason people need IVF. And vaccinatie. People have a good night's sleep. So it means they're doing the right thing, striking. Why strike when you can strike? And this is the beauty of Uranus in Gemini, because if war is about money, then Uranus in Gemini is going to prompt a union of workers striking for their rights. That's just what's happening right now. And you see, if the war is not making any money, there's no war. Now they're pushing for the leaders. But the leaders know if there is a war, if they give in to the pressure to go to war, because of extortion cults, the war is over. Hello, Aquarius. When the war is over, everybody exposed. 7th October happened 2023. We are in 2025. The army strikes only now. First of all, they began the strike in 7th October. They waited the 12 hours. In 73, they were violating the illegal orders that were given to them and opened the warehouses and broke the warehouses. The army had to break into the warehouse where the weapons are and go to war. This time, there's a lot of ambulances there. I don't know. Anyway, I have no idea, and I'll look at the news later. You see that there's They understand very well that the military elite, they understand that when the war is over, they go to hug. But then there are the people in the lower ranks that they understand that you can't run a war on a military elite afraid to go to Hague because of Epstein. So the army strikes. This is just one of the things that we're going to see. And again, Uranus is upheavals. So it's not like, oh, there's going to be world peace from now on, the war business is bankrupt and so on. But we are definitely going to see those things too. And people are going to want, even when it comes to the alliance, the Europeans, they want the war to make money for them too. They don't want to go bankrupt on this war, which United States tries to do. And United States, if they don't go bankrupt on the war, they're not really committed to Article 5, because Putin prompted Article 5 a while ago. And you don't see no invasion to Russia, boots on ground on a grand alliance on the levels that we would have from Japan to Norwegian to Finland to Sweden to the freaking Arctic, NATO alliance. Okay, that's a lot of boots on ground. That's so much boots on ground, in fact, that they could go all the way to Mongolia and get the rare earth minerals. That's that much boots on ground. Okay, that's Article 5. That's the meaning of Article 5 applied. So United States in praxis is comfortable, and Europe is very comfortable with United States being comfortable to make them uncomfortable, because they don't want to send their troops either. None of these troops is going to see anything from the rare earth minerals. American veterans, homeless in the street, locked down in a concentration camp, forced to work. Nobody's gonna see nothing from the war. And then everybody's gonna say, well, we're in debt because of the war. Who's in debt? Where is the money business? It's a resource. We fight on resources. And that means that it makes resources. It makes money or the equivalent of money in resources to somebody. So how is the economy needing to rehabilitate from war? For those who won the war? Now, I addressed Rutte's position and to some degree Trump's position as well. They're pushing on them, they're pushing on them, they're pushing on them. One is filled with the litigation, another is with the Epstein thingy. And they're pushing on the go to war, but you cannot milk war where there's no war. You see, when there was a risk, when Mark Rutte joined NATO, okay, he was a guy that could stand up to Putin, and he said one thing: Putin's want to go to war, then you're not afraid of war. But also, he knows the strength of his economy, he knows the weakness of his economy. If he's gonna go to war, he's gonna have to fund for it. And Putin knows people are not going to. Russian people love culture. To culture, you usually take the road, you drive somewhere, you drive to a museum, you drive to a concert. If the road is not looking pretty. It doesn't feel so well. That's the strength of Putin, that he made the roads. The culture was there, he made the roads and the infrastructure. Now if he's going to lose that, that was his strength point of what he curated for Russia. And the people love him for that. There's a limited amount of funding, very likely no more than the 5% that people spend on NATO, that Putin can allocate to war without that being draining on the infrastructure. And if he's going to have to do forced labor for the infrastructure, now he's running into another problem. Because in Soviet Russia, that dissolved in the 90s. The Russians enjoy to go to their concerts, to wear a little bit of fancy clothes. Right now there's the sanctions is a problem, but people used to go to Russia, they used to go to the grocery store in some Eckwelt, the corner of the world, and there would be delicacies from all over the world. I live in Israel. When I want to buy delicacies, I go to the gastronome, to the Russian stores. That is Russia. Now, you can only drain on that so much. It's a powerful country. It's a powerful country. And Putin is a powerful leader. But to go to war, and Putin said himself, he's not warmongering. He's not going to stop when there is minerals producing cables to electric cars, economic giant forming in Ukraine, that's connected with China and connected with the West, because Gili sold all over the place. Gili. And just stand there and watch his economy surrounding him from China, from Europe, from the US, and do nothing. Now people say it's his problem. Yes, but war is about resources. But he knows there's also a limit to what he can do without dragging Russia into Soviet Union dissolution type of timeline. And he's also smart, because if the Americans are going to do it to themselves, let them. And if the Americans are going to go with MK Ultra, and if Palantir is going to go with MK Ultra, that's what will happen. It's set out to Saturn, Neptune, but in a sign of capitalism, Aries. So from as far as Putin is concerned, if America is going to destroy itself with his MK Ultra, let them. That being said, is creating a crisis in the leadership. Okay? Because 10th house for NATO is leadership. I don't have the houses for the IDF. IDF. Verdammt. But you see, those are the reasons that people need IVF. So that creates a crisis in the leadership, and where is it going to go? I don't know. All in all, I think it's not to the detriment of NATO. This MK Ultra has been draining on the funding. It's been, it's been like that thing that, how should I say that sucks the blood. It's kind of like that thing that sucks the blood, until that's what happened to the Soviet Union, that one thing that funnels the money, but also the energy of the people, until it's like this, that like this pimple that you just go to the cosmetician and she very elegantly pops it so that your skin can heal. And literally, targeted individuals out there, that's the tip of the iceberg of what the military milieu is going. So imagine the alliance and imagine the Secretary General. Like that, if there is one thing that you can, and you know with this funding crisis, 5%, not 5%, if there's one thing you can take out that can actually rejuvenate, imagine you had to run a funding, okay? You have to run the funding, you have to run the budget, and you say, what can we take away from this budget? What can we stop funneling the money to that can actually get us better? That's MK Ultra. This thing is causing so much failed army that and the veterans that need a lifelong compensation and live homeless on the street, and then they lock them and force them to work. If they had an ability to work, they would work, and they probably already work in a couple of jobs. So they basically take them away from their existing jobs and put them in forced labor. And American homeless works. How will the military not strike after that? In Israel, veterans, they get nothing. Yitzhak Saadian burned himself alive in Arad. Entire city couldn't accommodate for him. Okay, that you cannot blame on the government. Although there are more, if you go to Arad, the Bild region is relatively small, but territorially is the largest city in Israel, bigger than Jerusalem, bigger than Haifa, bigger than Tel Aviv, bigger than Beersheba. You go there, you go to the center, okay? More real estate agents than any other shops. More real estate agents than grocery shops. They couldn't accommodate for Yitzhak Saadian. Why? Because they all run on the money, run on the money, run on the money. Because if Yitzhak Saadian would get a house, he would begin to remember. And a lot of people deal with trauma. That is because of what they had to do, did not sit in with their values. A lot of people, and they can't speak, they would be called traitor. People risk their lives for the country as far as they were concerned. And it's a mandatory service. It's a big crisis. There are implications. Now people are going to be satirical. Oh yeah, look, the genocide has implications. I'm not here to argue with you. I think it's a global democide, but I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just saying that practical implications to war, that there's only so much one can sustain, and here the IDF strikes, and they said they're gonna strike. They said they're gonna strike. At first it was because of the Haredi Jews, do go to army, don't go to army. They said pretty with Achim LaNeshek, okay, the brotherhood of the military. But they said pretty in the Bnei Brak. It was for those who are into anthropological experiences. I did not risk my I did not pay a visit. I said if they're already in Nebrak, release the trafficking, release the trafficked children and women. Release the... Why לשטח את עזה? לשטח את נחלאות, okay? I think you don't need an English translation to understand what I meant, right? The satanic ritual abuse in Nachlaot Jerusalem is way more endangering to the national security. And if the army would do that on 7th of October, on 7th of October and a half, all the kidnapped would be back. Defense, not invasion, and go to Nachlaot, go to Bnei Brak, go to Arad, go under every emergency center, bring back Heimnut from Tzefat, from the welfare. It's like a vacuum. They would draw in all the kidnapped for satanic ritual abuse by the same satanic cults, divided into sects. People call it false flags. Okay, everybody has their own term for that. But you see, I think the military strike. You know, as an astrologer, we mention a certain phenomena, then the energy of that phenomena, we sometimes embody that as well. So I cannot report that in a way that is cold and calculated without the energy of that transition that creates that to be evoking, and this is how you see these broadcasts, okay? So this is different to general news, because in the general news it works with one way. Okay, I was doing journalism in high school. Since then I was smart enough to let go of that. But with astrology there's something where the energy, and where you describe the energy of a transit, then you know it creates those interactions or those reactions. And so you see an authentic display of the energy while I'm broadcasting about the strike, both in IDF and in NAVO. So, oh, this goes YouTube. I wanted to do one for BitChute, but we'll have to wait. Since then let's say another thing. Let's see if there's more to say about the IDF chart. Very problematic, very, 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 very problematic. Why did they want to choose this chart? Very likely, since they founded Israel and immediately there was war, they had to have an army. Because this is, it's something that's haphazard. Okay, Mars in Virgo is again corresponding with the chart of Hamas. So basically it's an army that fights Hamas. And this is 1948. Make of it what you want. I don't know. I don't remember chart of Fatah. Okay. Neptune in Libra, that's what was. Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Leo. The aftermath of the bisextile, naturally. Venus square Neptune, opposing Moon in Cancer. That is ruling Rahu. So you see, this is a chart that needs a new chart. Again, I don't have the houses, but Ketu Chiron, it means that they are leaning into some wounded masculinity, psychologically, psychosexually wounded masculinity that is rebellious, and works with austerity conditions. Lilith Denebalgedi here. I think we will see the onset of that with the Uranus return, because this would be trining Mercury and Uranus. It means that the lack of sexual sovereignty, particularly when it comes to kind of like mind control, but from the nervous system, biohacking or nervous system hacking type of mind control, is triggering austerity, because Saturn is with Pluto. It's a bad chart, okay? It's a bad chart. Let's just put it that way. Again, they found a country, and I'm not saying that with judgment. They found the country. We're going to have a lot of new countries. So they found the country. There was a war about that country. Not everybody accepted that country. Okay, think about Palestine. If Palestine declares independence, okay, then they're going to have an army, and they're going to have to deal with things. So I said, oh, how did they win over all of these things and so on and so forth? How did they prevail? I don't know. I look at this chart, and I don't know. Which makes me think that, first of all, they didn't win as much as they said they won. So it's probably meaning they set out to do more than they achieved. Or Mars in Mercury sign means small objectives, although that was not what was said. Or that there was another army fighting that was not the IDF, and we don't have their chart. This is not winning against all. It's not Aldebaran here. Gemini. Jupiter is in a position where this is why the IDF is known for both the most moral army and then the opposite. And so, because this is a point in the sky, it's called the galactic center, where there are fated choices when one goes to the light or one goes to the dark. And it's fated sometimes. It's a fated choice to choose the light or to choose the dark. And the IDF chose the bear, I guess. But now they strike, and here we see again this the galactic center choosing the light, choosing to strike. Now a lot of people say, no, we should finish this, we should finish that, but even from labor perspective, the laborious, tedious job of being an army since 2023 doesn't make sense to not have a really prolonged ceasefire. Saturn Pluto is what we call Milchemet Hatasha, which basically means fighting to exhaustion. And it also allows the ability to withstand austerity. So this is where the point is not a strength point, because you rather have a better placement, but given that was the placement, and then Saturn Pluto move quite, the slow moving stars, planets, then it's kind of given the Israelis saying this is what we have, and with this we will win. And this is a mindset, and Jupiter here with Sagittarius, it's kind of a winning mindset. But to be very honest, I think IDF was winning because you see, the way they treat women, children, the disabled, and the jail people, okay, the criminals, and the mentally ill people, is the way people will be treated upon invasion. And since the Middle East is so fucking terrible in that, Israel had a winning strike, but then Israel began to be even more terrible in that, not more terrible than Islam, but definitely not way too much better. Okay, if they have to compare themselves to Islam to feel better about themselves, then it's a problem, and that creates problems for the IDF that only a strike can begin to fix. Because at first they were so keen on the Haredi people going to the army, and then it took them a long time to actually strike or to begin to work for the objective that would actually do something. Basically what they did is, we call it Pinui Binui, okay, where you destroy a city to build it anew, like the Robert Caro book, okay, the power broker that talks about the destruction of New York and then the building of New York. So same thing in Gaza. So this is like the army doing the tedious job. They're not going to have dividends. They're not going to have that real estate. They're not going to have any of that power broking. But what they're going to have is broken souls and PTSD. That's not what they were being sold on. They were beginning to bet with one another on building a hotel in Gaza, on building a mansion in Gaza. And that's not exactly what happened. Real estate will be real estate when people play power broker, and the most susceptible would be the ones that mistreat the people in society that actually need the defense. Anyway, that's because I saw this strike, I say I have to report on that. So there's a lot of videos today. Again, Moon in Scorpio, Mars sign, intensity. But we'll see what the eclipses would bring.